The first time I saw her, she was crying in the parking lot of a grocery store at 2 in the morning, her shoulders shaking so violently that I almost drove, past, almost, but something in the way she held herself, curled over like she was trying to disappear into the asphalt itself, made me pull into the empty space. Beside her rusted Honda, I didn't know then that stopping would change everything. I didn't know that a stranger's tears under the fluorescent glow of a Walmart sign would crack open something in my chest that had been sealed shut for years. All I knew was that she was hurting, and I couldn't just drive away. Her name was Marie, though I wouldn't learn that until later. When I approached, she looked up with eyes so red and swollen they barely opened, mascara streaking down her cheeks like war paint. She was maybe 50, maybe 60, wearing scrubs decorated with cartoon, bears that seemed grotesquely cheerful, against the despair etched into every line of her face. In her lap sat an eviction notice, the words, "Final Warning," visible even in the dim light. "I'm sorry," she whispered when she saw me staring. "I'm so sorry. I just needed a minute before I went home to tell my daughter. I should have offered some generic comfort and walked away. That's what most people would do. That's what I would have done 6 months earlier, before my own life had been stripped down to its bones, before I'd learned what it meant to need help and have no one to ask. But standing there in that parking lot, watching this woman try to fold herself smaller and smaller, I heard myself say, 'How much do you need?' The question seemed to startle her more than my presence. She blinked, and fresh tears spilled over. 'I can't. I don't—' 'How much?' I repeated, softer this time. $3,000, she breathed out, the number hanging in the air between us like an impossible dream. $3,000 by Friday or we're on the street. My daughter, she's 16. She's got a scholarship interview next week for college. Full ride if she gets it. She can't miss that interview because we're homeless. She just can't. I didn't have $3,000. I had maybe $800 in my checking account and a mountain of my own bills. But I also had a car, a job, and a place to sleep that night. I had options she didn't. "Okay," I said, and I watched her face transform with confusion. "Let's figure this out." What happened next unfolded like a strange, beautiful dream. I started with a Facebook post at 3 in the morning, sitting in my own car with my phone's brightness turned down low. I explained Marie's situation, not using her name, just calling her her because it felt more universal that way. "Title her humanity," I typed. "Title her worth. Title her the reason you believe in goodness." I asked for $5 from anyone who could spare it. Just $5. To help a nurse who'd spent her life caring for others and now couldn't catch a break. By sunrise, the post had been shared 200 times. By noon, strangers were messaging me with donations. $10, $20, some offering $50 or $100. A woman in Seattle sent money with a note. I was her last year. Someone helped me. Pass it forward. A teacher from Georgia contributed her lunch money for the week. A retired veteran sent $200 and wrote simply, "Because nurses saved my life." But it wasn't enough. By Thursday afternoon, we'd raised $1,800. And I'd sold my laptop, my gaming console, and a guitar I'd been saving for years to make up more of the difference. I was still $300 short when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this about the nurse?" a gruff voice asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "I'm her landlord," the man said, and my heart sank. "Someone sent me the Facebook post. Told me I should be ashamed of myself for evicting a nurse during a pandemic." I started to apologize, to explain that I'd never mentioned him, but he cut me off. "They're right," he said quietly. "My wife was a nurse. Died 3 years ago from COVID. She would have kicked my ass for this." He paused, and I heard him clear his throat. "Tell her the rent's forgiven for 3 months. Tell her to get her daughter to that interview. Tell her to title her story something good, because life's too short for anything else." I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. The landlord waited, saying nothing, until I could speak again. "Thank you," I managed. "No," he said. "Thank you for giving a damn." When I told Marie, she collapsed into a chair and covered her face with her hands. Her daughter, a tall girl with her mother's eyes and a steel spine, wrapped her arms around her mom and looked at me with such fierce gratitude that I had to look away. "Why?" Marie asked when she could finally speak. "Why would you do this for me?" "You don't even know me." I thought about how to answer that. I thought about my own rock bottom 6 months earlier, sleeping in my car after losing my job and my apartment in the same week. I thought about the stranger who'd bought me breakfast at a diner and listened to my story without judgment. I thought about the friend who'd let me crash on her couch for 2 months, asking nothing in return. I thought about all the small, magnificent acts of kindness that had pulled me back from the edge. Because someone did it for me once, I said finally. And because you matter. Your daughter matters. Your story matters. The Facebook post took on a life of its own. News outlets picked it up. Title Her became a hashtag, a movement. People started sharing their own stories of being helped by strangers, of small miracles that had changed everything. A talk show flew me out to Los Angeles and asked me to tell Marie's story on air. When they handed me the microphone, I looked into the camera and said what had been burning in my chest. Since that night in the parking lot, we spend so much time arguing about who deserves help, I said. We create all these rules and requirements, these hoops people have to jump through to prove they're worthy of basic human compassion. But here's what I learned from her, from Marie. We all deserve help. Every single one of us. Because we're human, and that's enough. That has to be enough. The studio audience stood and applauded, but I barely heard it. I was thinking about Marie's daughter, who'd aced her scholarship interview and gotten the full ride. I was thinking about the hundreds of messages I'd received from people who'd started their own Title Her campaigns in their communities, helping strangers with rent, with groceries, with medical bills, with hope. I was thinking about how one woman's tears in a parking lot had cracked open something in the collective heart of a nation that desperately needed to remember its capacity for goodness. 3 months later, I was back at that same Walmart parking lot, this time at a reasonable hour, when I saw Marie. She was getting out of her car, wearing those same cartoon bear scrubs, her face tired but peaceful. She saw me and smiled, the kind of smile that reaches all the way to the soul. "Hey," she said, walking over. "I was hoping I'd run into you." "How's everything going?" I asked. "Good," she said, and I could hear the wonder in her voice, like she still couldn't quite believe it. "Really good. Sarah's loving college. I got a raise at work. We're making it." She paused, studying my face. "What about you?" "I'm okay," I said, and it was true. More than okay, actually. I'd found a new job, a better one. I'd moved into a small apartment with a window that got morning sun. I'd started volunteering at a homeless shelter, paying forward what had been given to me. "I never thanked you properly," Marie said softly, "for seeing me, for stopping, for caring enough to act." "You don't have to thank me," I told her. "You just have to keep going. Keep being you. Keep raising that amazing daughter. Keep showing up for your patients. That's thanks enough." She hugged me then, tight and fierce, and I hugged her back. Two strangers who weren't strangers anymore, connected by a moment of crisis and a choice to care. When we pulled apart, she was crying again, but this time they were different tears. "Title her brave," she whispered. "That's what Sarah said about me. She said, 'Mom, if anyone ever tells your story, make sure they title her brave.' But you were the brave one. You're the one who stopped." I shook my head. "We were both brave," I said. "You for letting yourself be helped. Me for offering. And everyone who donated, who shared, who cared. We were all brave together. That's how this works." As I drove home that afternoon, I thought about titles and labels, about how we name things and people and moments. I thought about how we're so quick to title people by their worst moments, by their failures and their struggles, but so slow to title them by their resilience, their strength, their fundamental worthiness of love and help and grace. Title her human, I thought. Title her worthy. Title her deserving of kindness, not because she earned it or proved herself or jumped through the right hoops, but simply because she exists. Because we all exist together in this messy, beautiful, heartbreaking world. And the only way through it is together. Hand in hand, stranger helping stranger. Light finding light in the darkness. That's the story I want to tell. That's the title I want to give to every person. Struggling in parking lots and on street corners. And in quiet desperation behind closed doors. Title her seen. Title her valued. Title her loved. Title her saved, not by grand gestures or massive interventions, but by the small, steady accumulation of humans choosing, again and again, to care. Because in the end, that's all any of us really are. Fragile, Imperfect people trying our best to make it through, hoping that when we stumble, someone will be there to catch us. And when we're strong enough, choosing to be the ones who catch others when they fall. Title her hope. Title her humanity. Title her the reason you still believe in goodness, even when the world makes it hard to believe. Title her us all,